Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. I am honestly so thrilled you're tuning in today, because we're about to dive into something that's as fascinating as it is deeply unsettling. We're setting the stage to look at 10 harrowing aviation disappearances that completely shatter our implicit trust in modern technology. Seriously, if you've ever felt completely secure looking out the window of a passenger jet, well, the facts we're about to uncover might just change your perspective for good.
Okay, let's dive right into this. We're looking at exactly 10 routine flights. And to be clear, we aren't talking about ancient maritime myths here. These are documented, tracked flights that totally defied physics, defied logic, and thwarted literally the most massive search efforts ever assembled, only to completely vanish into thin air.
Which brings up a really chilling question I want you to hold in your mind as we go through this explainer. What actually happens when the sky simply closes its doors? We put so much implicit trust in our radar grids, air traffic control towers, our GPS tracking. We believe the skies are perfectly mapped and monitored. But what happens when those systems just fail, or when something happens up there that those systems simply cannot record? Let's look at our first thematic grouping. Chapter 1. Disorientation and sudden silence, the earliest anomalies. Now, what's really interesting about these earliest mysteries is that they didn't leave behind any evidence of a fiery crash or some obvious mechanical failure. Instead, they were characterized by complete spatial disorientation from the pilots, followed by an abrupt, terrifying radio silence. Just look at how these three distinct flights line up. Flight 19 in 1945, a DC-3 in 1948, and Flight 251 in 1950. Despite flying in super familiar, heavily trafficked corridors like the Miami coast or Lake Michigan, they all experienced sudden communication failure. Remember, these weren't uncharted territories. These were routine routes where they just blinked out of existence. I want you to really absorb this quote from Lieutenant Charles Taylor of Flight 19. "We can't tell where we are. Everything looks wrong. Even the ocean doesn't look as it should." That is just chilling, right? We are talking about multiple, highly trained, experienced military pilots flying in formation, experiencing simultaneous equipment failure and total visual disorientation. And this is under moderately clear skies.
And it's not like authorities just shrugged this off. The sheer scale of the immediate rescue operations was absolutely staggering. The Navy dispatched ships and submarines to scour 250,000 square miles for Flight 19. For Flight 2501, they had massive sonar dragging operations combing the depths of Lake Michigan for a really sturdy multi-engine aircraft. And for the DC-3, the Coast Guard immediately mobilized right in the shallow, highly patrolled waters off the coast of Miami.
Yet despite thousands of personnel, ships, and aircraft out there desperately looking for these massive machines, zero wreckage was found. Not a single main fuselage was ever recovered. The official reports for all three of these incidents ended with the exact same, completely hollow conclusion. Cause unknown.
Moving right along to Chapter 2. Ghost planes and strange encounters. Mid-air bizarreness.
So while our first group dealt with extreme disorientation, these next flights involve deeply unsettling physical and visual anomalies happening right in the middle of the sky. Let's walk through the tragic timeline of Helios Flight 522 back in 2005. At 0 minutes, maintenance leaves a pressurization switch in manual. Just 15 minutes later, hypoxia, which is a severe lack of oxygen, silently incapacitates the flight crew. By 90 minutes, Hellenic Air Force jets intercept the plane, and the fighter pilots see this truly chilling sight: an empty captain's seat and oxygen masks deployed. For almost 3 hours, this Boeing 737 flew itself on autopilot as a literal ghost plane before running out of fuel and crashing in Greece, tragically taking 121 lives. All from one single overlooked switch. And this brilliantly illustrates a completely different type of ghost plane anomaly, the 2003 stolen Boeing 727. Think about the sheer absurdity of this for a second. We're talking about a 40-foot tall commercial jet with a 100-foot wingspan, taken from an active runway in Angola by two men who weren't even certified to fly it. I mean, it's hard enough to misplace your car keys, right? Let alone a massive commercial jet. It took off without clearance, with no transponder, and completely vanished over the Atlantic. Over 20 years later, not a single landing gear or tail fin has ever been found. But honestly, perhaps nothing is quite as visceral as the final words of 20-year-old pilot Frederick Valentich over the Bass Strait in 1978. He radioed in, "That strange aircraft is hovering on top of me again. It is hovering and it's not an aircraft." Just seconds after that transmission, air traffic control heard an unexplained metallic scraping sound. And then, Total silence. He and his plane disappeared without a trace.
All right, Chapter 3, Military Shadows and Secrets, the Geopolitical Void.
Now, I've got to warn you, we're entering a pretty dark realm here. This is where aviation anomalies collide directly with covert intelligence, national security, and military operations. When we compare the official military narratives with the actual physical anomalies, massive gaps start to appear. For Flight 739 in 1962, the official stance was cause unknown. Yet that completely ignores a tanker ship's logs that reported a high-altitude explosion and glowing trails. Then you look at KAL-007 in 1983. The official and Soviet narrative cites a tragic navigational error. But that leaves out the unexplained anomalies, redacted black box files, missing bodies, and widespread allegations that the plane was actually shadowing a US RC-135 spy plane.
So the crucial point here is understanding what it actually means when a plane vanishes over land. Take a look at the 1995 vanishing of the N-72. This military jet was carrying General Yertayev over the heavily monitored Hindu Kush. Yet there was no emergency call, no beacon, and no crash site ever found. Even more incredibly, there was a complete absence of any satellite heat signature or seismic impact. Heavily redacted memos hint at foul play. How does an entire military jet over land simply cease to exist? It really points to either an inconceivably sudden catastrophic event or a deliberate, totally untraceable intervention.
Which brings us to Chapter 4, MH370, the Modern Enigma.
This right here is the true climax of our explainer. The 2014 disappearance of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. This is the event that truly shattered our modern illusion of aviation safety. Let's briskly review these baffling facts. March 8, 2014, a Boeing 777 departs with 239 people. The final words from the cockpit were a calm, "Good night, Malaysian 370." The anomaly? The transponder was manually turned off and the plane sharply deviated course. It became a ghost flight, flying for over 6 hours into the remote Indian Ocean, confirmed only by these brief satellite handshakes. And the void? The largest search in human history yielded absolutely no main fuselage. Now, investigators did find a flight simulator route on the captain's computer that raised a lot of suspicion, but the 2018 final report offered no conclusive motive or explanation for why this actually happened.
I really want to ask you this directly. If a 250-ton commercial aircraft can evade every single 21st century detection system for hours on end, what else can disappear? We put so much implicit trust in our GPS, our smartphones, our global surveillance. But MH370 proved that even today, in the modern era, a massive object can simply slip right through the cracks of all our technology.
Let's move to Chapter 5, a chilling pattern of silence.
Let's see how this builds, because it is finally time to reveal the overarching mystery connecting every single one of these 10 flights. The true pattern linking these events is not the geography, it's not the weather, or even the planes themselves. The pattern is institutional silence. It is a coordinated pattern of omission, redacted files, and cause unknown verdicts. The real connection is the subsequent retreat into plausible deniability by the very institutions meant to protect us. When the systems fail, the response is almost always just a sudden silence and a classified report. This is the key takeaway I want you to leave with today. The missing aircraft are missing opportunities. Every wreck buried in secrecy is a suppressed chapter in the evolution of human knowledge. These events expose a terrifying blind spot in our reality, and the continued suppression of these truths actively prevents us from understanding what is truly interfering with flight, with physics, and with perception. So, I leave you with this final provocative thought. If the structures we rely on to keep the sky safe are merely an illusion, how high does the silence truly go? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep questioning the narrative, keep looking up, and never stop learning.